order in light of what you have just mentioned. Mr. Speaker, after you have suspended 3 members of this House, you stated, and it is in record, I'm sure, that you're suspending the sitting of the House. And then you walked out, and that is the point where you named, I don't know if it's 2 or 3 members. And my point of order is that under Standing Order 48 and 49, an honourable member can only be named at the sitting of Parliament, and at the time you name those honourable members, Parliament was not sitting. So I know that you're going to give your ruling subsequently, so may I ask you, Mr. Speaker, to bear this in mind when giving your ruling, the point that I've just made.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I will instantly give you the reply, Honourable Member. Being a seasoned politician, parliamentarian, you should know that the precinct of the Parliament, whether sitting or not sitting, is a precinct of Parliament. Thank you. Please continue.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. These quarantine centers allowed us to curb down the infection rate while ensuring that a patient, whenever the latter turned positive, was provided with adequate health care immediately. Regarding contact tracing, this was a tedious part of our containment plan, but it has shown its efficiency. This crucial aspect of our strategy incurred payment of additional charges, overtime to staff who worked round the clock, and higher number of trips covered by ambulances to convey patients. We also made extensive use of our hotline to educate our population on the dangers and how to protect themselves against the virus. Communication was an important component of our strategy, and today everybody knows about COVID-19 and how to protect themselves. This government set up COVID-19 testing centers in all regional hospitals in a record time. Again, we all agree on how these facilities have contributed in our fight against the pandemic. Such measures carried out extensively in Mauritius have been acclaimed internationally. Mr. Speaker, sir, while health systems around the world were crumbling under the weight of the pandemic, in Mauritius, our public health sector remained resilient. All our services offered at community health centers and specialized centers were maintained, while in other countries, they were compelled to make very difficult choices. In Mauritius, not a single patient has been denied of medical care, be it for COVID-19 or any other medical issue. To cater for COVID-19 testing, quarantine, and treatment of COVID-19 patients, and at the same time, running our normal services, we had to have recourse to overtime. In Réunion Island, for example, some 400 medical interventions had to be cancelled weekly in order to cater for COVID-19 patients. Programmed medical appointments for cardiac patients and even for expecting mothers had to be rescheduled. This situation was such that le Service de Santé des Armées was called to assist medical staff to handle the surge of COVID-19 cases in Réunion Island. Mr. Speaker, sir, not later that I will, the WHO has clear guidelines on how to declare COVID-19 death. Across the world, Mr. Speaker, sir, countries have noted an increase in mortality during the pandemic. These deaths were not exclusively attributed to COVID-19, but they were due to other factors as well. In Mauritius, 11,174 deaths were recorded in 2019, 11,060 deaths in 2020, and 13,274 deaths in 2021. The same tendency has been noted worldwide. The WHO even states that our planet has registered some 6 million COVID-19 deaths, and that during the pandemic, over-mortality, I'll stress it, Mr. Speaker, sir, over-mortality amounted to 15 million. I need not to remind the House what happened in developed countries. Mauritius is no exception to the backlash of this unprecedented pandemic. Mr. Speaker, sir, as for the training, we work closely with WHO to ensure that our staff were aware of all the best practices in terms of COVID-19. The additional budget also allowed our ministry to upgrade our laboratory services with COVID-19 laboratory information management system. This online platform allowed quick sharing of information, and it is now being upgraded to a national LIMS. I wish to inform the House that we have done more than 1.1 million PCR tests and 517,000 rapid antigen tests free of charge since the beginning of this pandemic. Mr. Speaker, sir, COVID-19 vaccination has undoubtedly contributed in the reopening of our borders and in allowing us to resume our normal economic and social activities. Mauritius rolled out its campaign only weeks after developed countries like US. In order to achieve wide coverage, we had to rent venues for vaccination purposes. It is good to note that at one point in time, we had operating as many as 40 vaccination points around the island. Similarly, we had to procure appropriate equipment for storage and convenience of vaccines. Vaccination of our population would not have been possible had we not recruited additional staff to that effect. Mauritius is in fact among the first countries in Africa in terms of vaccination coverage, and we also achieved our vaccination targets well ahead of time. Mr. Speaker, sir, last month in France, the French Minister of Public Accounts stated that expenses on health have already exceeded budgeted amounts by 3 billion euros. French authorities expect...
Excuse me, Minister, you're going out of debate, and please come back. You have only 2 minutes left.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir, I will conclude that the IMF mission, which came to Mauritius in April, this year highlighted that the public health impact on the pandemic was well managed. The WHO had prompted my ministry to document our strategies so as to showcase our remarkable achievement to other member states. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you. Honorable Obigadou.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, were it not for the regrettable incident having occurred earlier, I wanted to commend the 2 MPs from the opposition who have taken the pain of intervening on this bill. I may totally disagree with the substance of what they said and the tenor, but nonetheless, I think it is positive for parliamentary democracy that we should have at least 2 MPs intervening on this bill. Unfortunately, it's 2 MPs from the same party, the MMM. It looks as if that neither the Labour Party nor the PMSD does not have any interest. And if we have done something so wrong as to waste public funds and now asking the sanction of Parliament for splashing out unreasonably public funds, I would have expected the Labour Party and the PMSD to join the MMM in questioning us. So it is very, very strange, and it reflects a wider picture of the opposition not partaking fully in parliamentary debates. Yesterday, I was very sad to see that when we ended parliamentary debates, there were only 3 or 4 MPs present. And this morning again, when Honourable Utim spoke, there were only 3 other MPs present. So this is a matter of regret, and I do hope that the opposition will fully participate in these debates, which are so important for them to scrutinise past and projected expenditure. My second remark, Mr. Speaker, is that the supplementary budget provides for 72 million rupees, 72,157,000 for the Ministry of Tourism. In fact, there was an additional expenditure of more than 125 million, part of which has been addressed through reallocation of existing funds under the budget. And today, the vote will be for the appropriation of 72,157,000. Now, the estimates lay down a number of items which I will not go into, such as personal emoluments, other staff costs, fuel and oil, rent, office equipment, etc. I will rather focus on the major item, which is MTPA, additional provision required mainly for effecting payments to hotels used as quarantine centres for COVID-19 cases. Honourable Utim raised 4 points arising from the report of the Director of Audit. Unfortunately, these 4 points do not relate to this expenditure. They were points relating to travel agent not having repaid government, an hotelier who owes money to government for PCR tests, a hotel agent for the Wakashio. So I shall be very happy to respond to these questions if they are formulated in the form of a PQ at any time Honourable Utim deems appropriate, but they are irrelevant to our debate today. Now, as concerns our debate today, Honourable Fouquin, and I regret the fact that the incident occurred and she's not here, mentioned, or was it Honourable Utim, that there was no fault having gone into planning expenditure. That is absolutely true, Mr. Speaker, because we could not think of COVID before COVID occurred. And when COVID occurred, nobody knew what to think. Nobody knew what would happen. And things happened very quickly. So, yes, indeed, this expenditure was unplanned and could not have been planned and could not have been foreseen. Faced in the face of adversity, an adversity we could never have imagined, we tried to our level best to cope and protect our population to the best of our ability, which is why I am so surprised that Honourable Fouquin should have asked the question, pourquoi il y a eu un empressement? Mais l'empressement, c'était pour sauver des vies. Mr. Speaker, it's as simple as that. We had to save lives, and COVID was killing our brethren every day, and every member of this assembly knows at least one family which has lost a member to COVID. We had to act fast, respecting procurement procedures. Now, over the last couple of years, we have tried to be as transparent, as open as we could, answering all questions. The first PQ on this issue arose in June of 2020. That is at the start of the period for which we are voting an additional expenditure. My colleague, Minister Lejonga, who was then at Tourism, provided to Honourable Lachman Roy all the information we had, explaining why there was a decision of health to place in quarantine Mauritians coming from abroad, and how, in a situation of urgency, 19 hotels were requisitioned because health informed government that public buildings available were not appropriate for quarantine purposes. My colleague spoke to l'ARIM. True it is, at times these consultations had to be done over the phone because from one day to the next, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, then headed by Honourable Buddha, was organizing the return of our compatriots, and it was a very urgent situation, and we had to act to the best of our abilities in such situations. Persons were placed in quarantine with towels and beddings provided by hotels, free meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner on a daily basis, sanitary kits. We had to ensure cleaning of these rooms. C'était ce que les Français ont appelé le quoi qu'il en faut. We had to do it. Quoi qu'il en coûte, I'm sorry, this is what the term used, because we had to save lives. Now, around the same time, Honourable Fouquin put a question to me, and I went on to explain that after this first step, there was a consultation with both l'ARIM and l'Association des Hôtels de Charme, and we established a first list of 19 hotels joining the quarantine scheme, and it was extremely difficult. Some of these hotels already had clients. They had to be booked out to create space. And my personal opinion, Mr. Speaker, is that my colleague, Minister Lejongal, with the help of the Ministry of Tourism and the MTPA, did an excellent job, a wonderful job in protecting lives and accommodating quarantine in a situation totally unforeseen and unforeseeable. In April of last year, Honourable Ariane Navarre-Marie also put a question to the Minister of Tourism, and we explained that there was this first phase of quarantine, followed by the second confinement starting in March 2021, where we had paid quarantine in designated quarantine facilities. Now, over the period of this supplementary budget, 2020-2021, there were very many expressions of interest. In fact, there were 8, Mr. Speaker, sir, on 15th EOIs when expression of interest were launched, 15th September 2020, 18th September 2020, 22nd September 2020, and we had to repeat because there was no response, there was no interest by hotels. 21st October 2020, 12th November 2020, 14th July 2021, 4th of March 2021, and 30th of March 2021. So not only did we have recourse initially to Directive 44 of the Public Procurement Office for emergency procurement, but we resorted to 8 separate expression of interest exercises. Now, I will not dwell at greater length. I merely want to say, Mr. Speaker, that we did what we had to do to protect our population. And fortunately, the Ministry of Finance provided help, advice, and funding for us to do so. We have always played the card of openness and transparency. And I would pray to the opposition that over and above the demagoguery that we have been witnessing, protection de petits copains, wastage of public funds, if there is any specific allegation to challenge the integrity of my colleague, the Minister of Health, of my colleague, my predecessor at the Ministry of Tourism, or myself, that they should go to the police, that they should go to ICAC, providing the facts and the due process of investigation, the due process of law will follow. But it is not sufficient to come in this House and under the cover of parliamentary immunity to embark on a smear campaign against members of government. I believe I have said what I had to say, Mr. Speaker, and I would invite members to support the present bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Monsieur le Président, avant toute chose, permettez-moi d'adresser mes remerciements à l'ensemble des orateurs et plus particulièrement à mes collègues ministres. L'honorable Obigadou, l'honorable Esnou, l'honorable Ganou et l'honorable Jagatpal ont tous les 4 apporté avec la plus grande transparence et conviction de pertinentes précisions concernant les dépenses encourues par leurs ministères respectifs. Je ne reviendrai donc pas sur chaque poste de dépense car ces derniers ont largement été explicités par les membres de la majorité. En revanche, je m'attellerai à les remettre dans leur contexte et à en expliquer le fondement et l'efficacité. Et au regard des propos qui ont été tenus dans cette auguste assemblée par certains membres de l'opposition, depuis le début des débats budgétaires, cette mise au point est nécessaire. Car à ma connaissance, ni la démagogie, ni l'antipatriotisme n'ont jamais fait avancer un pays dans la bonne direction. Monsieur le Président, je rappelle que le montant supplémentaire de 1,18 milliard de roupies que nous avons voté aujourd'hui concerne l'année fiscale 2020-2021. Un détail, pourtant pas des moindres, dont l'abstraction par l'opposition révèle sans détour sa déliquescence. Prise d'une énième crise d'amnésie, l'opposition fait une nouvelle fois fi du contexte de la pandémie. Après toutes les épreuves que Maurice a traversées au cours des 2 dernières années, le comique de répétition n'est plus à l'ordre du jour. Il est stupéfiant que les membres de l'opposition s'obstinent encore à apparenter ces dépenses inopinées à une mauvaise gestion des fonds publics. Aurions-nous pu prévoir la plus grave crise de notre histoire? Aurions-nous pu anticiper des dépenses de santé bondissantes? Mais surtout, qu'aurions-nous dû faire? Abandonner la population mauricienne, le personnel hospitalier, ainsi que notre système de santé dans la foulée? Aurions-nous dû sacrifier la vie des Mauriciens sur l'autel d'un exercice budgétaire comptable? De ce côté de la Chambre, nous n'affirmons pas avoir le monopole du cœur, mais tout du moins en avoir un. Monsieur le Président, la très grande majorité des dépenses supplémentaires votées aujourd'hui a trait à la gestion de la pandémie. Ces fonds, à hauteur de 1,08 milliard de roupies pour le ministère de la Santé et de 72,2 millions de roupies pour le ministère du Tourisme, ont permis de sauver des vies. Si sauver des vies, préserver notre système de santé et rémunérer les frontliners pour leur engagement est un gaspillage, alors il est clair que l'opposition a définitivement sombré dans l'antipathie antisociale, la démagogie et le mensonge. Monsieur le Président, grâce à la stratégie de prévention et de protection mise en place par ce gouvernement, nous avons traversé la crise sans permettre l'effondrement de notre structure économique, sociale et sanitaire. Aujourd'hui, nous nous relevons plus forts, plus solidaires, plus résilients. Ce gouvernement maintient son cap, un cap qui lui permet de mener la population mauricienne à bon port, celui de la résilience économique, sociale et sanitaire. En plaçant l'humain avant tout, nous avons fait le choix d'encourir des dépenses imprévues pour le bien de notre peuple. C'est la position qui a toujours été défendue par notre Premier ministre, l'honorable Pravin Kumar Jagnat, et pour laquelle nous avons été portés aux responsabilités. Contre vent et marée, nous continuerons à faire de la protection des Mauriciens le fondement de l'action publique et de son financement. Sur ces mots, je vous remercie de votre attention et recommande à présent le projet de loi à l'Assemblée.
Is it seconded? The question is that the Supplementary Appropriation 2020-2021 number 3 Bill number 7 of 2022 be read a second time. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it.
Committee of Supply.
Please be seated.
Estimates of supplementary expenditure 2020-2021, number 3 of 2022. Vote 5-4, Mauritius Meteorological Services.
The question is that the sum of 7,144,000 rupees for vote 5-4, Mauritius Meteorological Services stand part of the schedule. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no.
Chair, just for clarification, are we going to do page by page or item by item?
We'll see the number of orators who would like to intervene, and from there we'll...
Because I have a question on page 3, nothing on page 2.
Please, go ahead.
Under the item 22-120, fees, may I know who are the consultants? What is the total fees paid to them? Whether they have completed the project and whether they have completed the project.
A grant of 260 million Japanese yen amounting to 81 million rupees was obtained from Japan International Cooperation Agency for the project enhancing meteorological observation, weather forecasting and warning capabilities for the period 2019-2020 to 21-22. At that time, due to traveling restriction, JICA conveyed the training online in order to continue with the implementation of the project. During the financial 2021 and 2022, 2020 and 2021, a book adjustment of 26,944,000 was made.
The question is that a sum of 7,144,000 rupees for vote 5-4 Mauritius Meteorological Services sent part of the schedule. The ayes have it.
Vote 7-5 Corporate and Business Registration Department.
The question is that a sum of 10,255,000 rupees for vote 7-5 Corporate and Business Registration Department sent part of the schedule. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it.
Yes. Under page 4, item 21,110, personal emoluments, basic salary. May I know from the Honourable Minister the number of staff that were recruited during that year?
Mr. Speaker, sir, there was the assignment of 17 compliance officers to principal compliance officers, and also the promotion of 1 deputy registrar of companies, 1 3 chief compliance officers, and 3 principal compliance officers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Item 21,112, other staff costs. Point 100, traveling and transport. May the Minister give us more details?
Additional provision was required to meet payment of traveling to officers with the new attribution of the CBRD for the prompt collection of trade and registration fees with effect from January 2020 on behalf of local authorities.
5, item 22,050, office expenses, Roman 2, additional provision required due to unforeseen expenses. May I know from the Honourable Minister what were these unforeseen expenses?
Because, sir, additional provision was required due to increase in postage expenses in relation to compounding of many companies, and also unforeseen sundry expenses in connection with AML CFT matters. Okay. No, I don't. I'm going to look into it and come back to the chamber with the appropriate expenses.
The question is that a sum of 10,255,000 rupees, vote 7-5 corporate and business registration departments then part of the schedule. The ayes have it.
Vote 8-1 Minister of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade.
The question is that a sum of 7,849,000 rupees for vote 8-1 Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade stand part of this schedule. Those in favor say aye. Aye.
Thank you, Chair. Page 8, item 2111, wages, provision required for payment of staff employed. May I know from the Honourable Minister how many staff do this item relate to, and out of which how many are locals and how many are Mauritians?
This is for the additional provision required for payment of wages to staff employed by 21 overseas missions. This is the information I have.
Was how many staff do we have? Does this relate to payment for the staff? And out of these staff, how many are Mauritians and how many are locals?
I don't have the information, Mr. Speaker. If the honourable member comes with a question, I will be glad to give him the information.
On page 9, item 22040, equipment and furniture, there is provision for the purchase of furniture for the newly posted ambassador in Dubai. So the Honourable Minister stated that the ambassador doesn't have a place of residence in Dubai. So may I know, these furniture relates to what?
This was the purchase of furniture for the newly posted ambassador in Dubai, Mr. Speaker, sir. So it was in view of the urgency to open the consulate in Dubai at that time, and that was the sum spent for the purchase of furniture, and also included in this item is also the purchase for the PABX system in New Delhi. This is the information I have.
Is that for the office or residence? Because it's mentioned the furniture. That's what I just want to know.
That was for the office, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Page 11, item 31121, acquisition of vehicle for Dubai consulate. I know from the Honourable Minister, what is the make of the vehicle and what was the procurement method used to purchase the vehicle?
The information I have, Mr. Speaker, sir, is that in view of the urgency to open the consulate, financial clearance was obtained for the purchase of the vehicles, and one vehicle has already been sold and a refund has been effected to the consolidated fund. So the vehicle, one of the vehicles has been sold, and the refund has already been effected to the consolidated fund. With regard to the make, it was a Nissan vehicle.
Mr.
Speaker, sir, on page 8, non-residential building, for item 3112.401, upgrading of office building. Can the Minister give more details?
So which item?
Page 8, 3112.401, upgrading of office building. Additional provision required for partitioning works at Newton. Can you give more details?
Yeah, this was, as I said earlier on, Mr. Speaker, sir, it was for the Newton Tower premises. It was in relation to the contract awarded for the renovation works and the purchase of assets, Mr. Speaker, sir. A request for the renovation of an office, including lounge, reception area, secretariat office, kitchen, and others, located at the 11th floor, was received in November 2019. And the project manager prepared the scope of works, which included renovation works to be carried out concurrently at the office of the advisor of the then minister on the 14th floor. There were several remarks which were made by the audit, Mr. Speaker, sir. The approval for the reallocation of funds was obtained on the 19th of March 2020 after the award of the contract for renovation works of 1.7 million on the 5th February 2022. And this is the information I have.
Last question.
Who is the contractor? Was awarded the contract?
Speaker, I ask, I asked for this information, but I cannot see it in my notes. I will, of course, provide the information if the honourable member comes up with a PQ.
The question is that the sum of 7,849,000 rupees for vote 8-1, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and International Trade stand part of the schedule. Those in favour say aye. Aye. Ayes have it.
Vote 14-1, Ministry of Tourism.
The question is that the sum of 72,157,000 rupees for vote 14-1, Ministry of Tourism stand part of the schedule. Those in favour say aye. Those against say no.
Page 14, item 26313. That is the additional funding to MTPA. Can the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister table a list of the hotels who have benefited from the payment and the amount that has been paid to each hotel?
Yes, with pleasure, Mr. Speaker. We'll just have to apportion the amount, know which hotels benefited from this amount, and I shall do so at the earliest.
The question is that the sum of 72,157,000 rupees for vote 14-1, Ministry of Tourism stand part of the schedule. Those in favour say aye, those against say no. Ayes have it.
Vote 21-1, Ministry of Health and Wellness.
The question is that the sum of 1,083,069,000 rupees for vote 21-1, Ministry of Health and Wellness and part of the schedule. Those in favour say aye, those against say no.
Yes, page 17, Chair. Additional decimal 005, extra assistance, additional provision following the recruitment of 273 doctors on contract. Will the Honourable Minister table the list of those 273 doctors and just indicate the duration of their contract, for how long they've been recruited?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. So I will table it now itself. This is a table of all the doctors who have been recruited for that purpose.
On page 19, item 22140, medical supplies, drug and equipment. May I know from the Honourable Minister, out of this almost 500 million rupees of additional funding, the proportion of that amount which relates to medical supplies, drugs and equipment purchased in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemics?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. Again, this is a long list, so I have it in my Annex 20. I will, in fact, table you all the drugs, medicine and drugs that have been purchased, including those of COVID-19.
Olmayat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Page 18, item 22030. Can the Honourable Minister list the name of companies who received payment under this item?
Page 18, sorry.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So page 18, item.
Item 22030.
22030. So this is for the renting. So yes, so I'm tabling the, again, the two companies where the renting have been done.
Thank you, Chair. Page 22, under item 22070, cleaning services. Can the Honourable Minister list the names of the suppliers who received payment under this item? Thank you.
Cleaning services, page 22. Yes, so this one is security services. It's annex. So the additional provision required due to increase of cost for the purchase of detergents and other cleaning materials due to COVID-19. So, yes, okay, I will table the material, the companies where all these cleaning materials have been purchased.
Honourable Danu.
Thank you, Chair. Page 19, item 22140, medical supplies, drugs and equipment. 101, medicine, drugs and vaccine. Can the Honourable Minister table the list of drugs and medicines and vaccine that has been supplied?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir, I will table the list.
Honourable Juman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Page 19, 22140. Can the Honourable Minister give us a list out of the 1.2 billion rupees procurement, how much of it was procured under emergency procurement, and the amount of drugs that has been expired out of this 1.2 billion rupees, and the list of suppliers from which emergency procurement, who supplied under emergency procurement.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, so this is a long list, so I'm going to table it, the list of medication as well as the suppliers who have supplied those medications.
On page 16, item 222200, incoming medical team. May I know from the Honourable Minister, who are these incoming medical teams and why did they come to Mauritius during the pandemic?
Mr. Speaker, sir, so what I have, so this item comprises of sub-items, air tickets, overseas treatment and foreign visiting teams, and hotel accommodation for foreign teams. With the gradual opening of borders and as per our established sanitary protocol, all incoming passengers were quarantined for a minimum period of 14 days in different hotels earmarked by MTPA, some 15 max in number, and that was settled by the Ministry of Health along with the medical support and surveillance required. So mostly this question is related to the overseas treatment and the foreign visiting teams that have come to Mauritius.
Thank you, Chair. Page 22, under item 2104, treatment and prevention of HIV and AIDS. Can the Honourable Minister list the names of the suppliers who received payment under this item?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, sir. So the supplier, Proximate Limited, for the supply, installation and commissioning of PCR platform viral detection. And then there is also the Separation Scientific Limited for the supply, commissioning and installation of multiplex PCR equipment. So these are the companies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Item 22040, page 18, on office equipment and furniture. Can the Honourable Minister list the names of the companies who received payment under this item? Item 22040, page 18.
Page 18. So the office equipment and office furniture, the companies being Junas Industries Limited, Nova Industries Limited, JB Enterprises, Neil Construction Limited, ST Limited, Bright Store Limited, Meuble Doul Limited.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the same page, item 22050, office expenses. Can the Minister list the name of suppliers who received payment under this item? Thank you.
So office expenses, this item. So the suppliers, they are Cellsonic Limited, Mauritius Limited, Omnicane International Trading Limited.
Ms. Rabin? Chair, page 23, item 22900, other goods and services. May we have more details as to the service providers under this item, please?
Page 23, item.
Page 23, item number 22900.
Yes. So, over and above the normal contract for the year 2020, 16 million rupees to Mauritius Broadcasting Corporation, which was paid in 2 installments in financial year 2020-21, an additional provision of 8,930,000 was required for settlement of 50% of the contract value for the year 2021, January to June 2021, as per contract agreement, for the production and broadcasting of annual package of programs on health matters, including spots and talks.
Thank you, Chair. Page 17, item 21210, social contribution, additional provision required for recruitment of additional staff. Can the Honourable Minister inform the House how many medical and health officers were recruited for the vaccination campaign?
So the number of doctors recruited being 273. 273.
Last question, Honourable Dulab.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So page 19, item 22150, scientific laboratory equipment and supplies. Can the Minister list the name of suppliers who received payment for this item? Thank you.
So this is item 2. Now, the laboratory apparatus and supplies, there are a lot of suppliers, so I will just give Ducré-Lenoir, Aculab, Zenture, Oregon Trading Limited, Proximed Limited, IBL Limited, Simpex Limited, Scientific Medical Supplies, Advanced Healthcare, Azul Medical Health, Biswal Trading Limited, Separation Scientific Limited. I'll table the list.
The question is that the sum of 1,083,069,000 rupees for vote 21-1, Ministry of Health and Wellness and part of the schedule. Those in favor say aye, those against no. Ayes have it.
Clause 1, short title, clause 2, appropriation of sums for supplementary expenditure in respect of services of government. Schedule.
The question is that the schedule sent forth of the bill. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Ayes have it.
Clause 1, short title, clause 2, appropriation of sums for supplementary expenditure in respect of services of government.
The question is that clauses 1 and 2 stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Ayes have it.
Title and enacting clause.
The question is that title and enacting clause stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye, those against say no. Ayes have it. The question is that I do report to the House that the estimates of supplementary expenditure 2020-2021 number 3 of 2022 and the supplementary appropriation 2020-2021 number 3, bill number 7 of 2022 have passed the Committee of Supply without amendment. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Please be seated. Honourable members, I have to report to the House that the estimates of Supplementary Expenditure 2020-2021 number 3 of 2022 and the Supplementary Appropriation 2020-2021 number 3 Bill number 7 of 2022 have passed a Committee of Supply without amendment.
The big bill, second reading.
Honourable Karichel.
Mr. Speaker, sir, on the 7th of June, that is last week, la Chambre a raisonné par le 103 coup tape la table following the presentation of the budget by the Minister of Finance. Au fait, Monsieur le Président, c'est 103 claques magistrales qui furent infligées aux membres de l'opposition ce jour-là. Les coups reçus leur ont fait tellement mal qu'ils n'arrivent même plus à accorder leur violon quand il s'agit de formuler des critiques contre ces mesures. I will, during the course of my address, say how and why. First of all, I would like to congratulate my colleague, the Honourable Panganaden Padeachi, Doctor, for having come up with measures that were beyond the expectations of everyone, I must admit, including opposition members who were left stunned, to a point that they are finding it difficult to formulate criticism like they always do after each budget presented by this government since 2019. Actually, to my opinion, the Minister of Finance, who is recently elected as the African Minister, Finance Minister of the Year, deserves a standing ovation as he did much better than expected. Why I say so, we all know the context in which we are today, a difficult and complex one. After the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on our economy, we are now facing constant waves of rising prices on food and other commodities following the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Despite these challenges, faithful to his values and principles, the Minister of Finance did not remain insensitive. Mr. Speaker, sir, some members on the other side of the House have said that this budget is similar to the two previous ones under this government. Actually, in order to cement the already fragile areas of our economy, there is no alternative than to pursue continuity in the vision of this government. This budget is therefore an extension of the previous budgets under this government, which is a sine qua non requirement to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19 and the after effects of the war in Ukraine. Hence, from all quarters, the big question was, what scope did the government and the Minister of Finance have for budget 2022-2023? Mr. Speaker, sir, nobody knew the answer to that question before the 7th of June. But once again, and against all economic odds, we chose to focus on our population, our people. We chose not to depart from the philosophy inherent to this government. Measures contained in this budget embody the main priorities of the MSM government, which is to shield the most vulnerable whilst at the same time investing for a better future. Since coming to power in December 2014, this has been our motto. Mr. Speaker, sir, at this juncture, allow me to respond to some criticism that have been formulated by some members of the opposition who intervened yesterday, especially to remind Honorable Shakil Mohammed and other members of the Labour Party of some undeniable facts. Monsieur le Président, une fois n'est pas coutume, on a entendu les mêmes formules habituelles, comme budget physique, budget d'effet d'annonce, etc. Mais j'invite la population à faire une simple comparaison entre ce gouvernement et celui qui fut appelé à gérer la crise financière de 2008-2009. À cette époque, on se rappelle de la régime travailliste, que la régime travailliste avait alloué des stimulus packages conséquents à 2 entreprises, l'un opéré dans le secteur du BPO et l'autre dans le textile. Le peuple n'a pas oublié comment ces millions de roupies avaient été dépensés. Et le pire, c'est que ces entreprises, au lieu d'être sauvées, avaient mis la clé sous la paillasson. Combien de gens se sont retrouvés sans emploi du jour au lendemain? Est-ce que vous vous souvenez, monsieur Assiavaden? Je me pose la question, est-ce que le membre du Parti travailliste et ceux du PMSD se souviennent de ça? Monsieur le Président, depuis la présentation du dernier budget, mardi dernier, un ancien ministre des Finances du Parti travailliste a refait son apparition. Ramassitanen, comme on le surnomme, la queue de ... comme le surnommé honorable Béranger, écrit la queue de ... chip. L'honorable Béranger, c'est honorable Béranger qui le surnommé comme ça. Honorable Béranger écrit, des articles dans les journaux et intervient à la radio. Il ose nous donner des leçons en économie. Je voudrais rafraîchir la mémoire des membres du gouvernement, Poste Travail CPMSD, s'agissant de leurs collègues d'alors. Ramassitanen, il ne faut pas oublier, c'est lui qui avait introduit la National Residential Property Tax, connue comme le fameux NRPT. Et pire, une taxe sur l'épargne du jamais vu. Ces mesures, je suppose, ont été présentées au cours de la présentation d'un de ces budgets. Monsieur le Président, en consultant le Hansard, je n'ai vu aucun des membres du Parti travailliste PMSD présents dans cette Chambre aujourd'hui s'opposer à ces mesures. Bien au contraire, je suppose qu'ils ont tapé la table ce jour-là. Je vois Patrick Assiavaden sourire en cachette. Honorable Mohamed, qui aime nous donner la leçon et qui prétend être différent des autres, où était-il à cette époque? Pourquoi n'a-t-il pas questionné ou même opposé son ministre des Finances et le convaincre de changer sa position sur les taxes immobilières et de l'épargne? Pire, Monsieur le Président, après la mort de la tisane, laissez-moi vous citer un article de l'Express en date le 30 avril 2010. Intervenant au Info Hall pour lui, le docteur Navin Ramgoolam a précisé que l'introduction de la taxe sur l'épargne est une œuvre de son ministre des Finances, Ramassitanen, et non de lui. Navin Ramgoolam essaie de se dissocier au maximum de Ramassitanen. Il a dit l'introduction de la taxe sur l'épargne, ce n'est pas moi, mais Ramassitanen devant une foule de partisans. Il a aussi dit j'avais une mauvaise intuition et je lui ai dit que cette mesure n'était pas bonne, mais il m'a expliqué que cette mesure existait en France et en Inde. Je lui ai alors dit de l'introduire et qu'on verra par la suite. That is what we call being wise after the event. Pas moi ça, lis ça. Mais je tape la table ensemble. Monsieur le Président, Ramas Talen, qui avait la confiance du gouvernement par travail PMSD, donc l'actuel leader de l'opposition était membre, ainsi que l'honorable Shakil Mohamed, l'honorable Boulel, l'honorable Assia Vaden, n'a pas fait que ça. Et aussi celui qui avait aboli la gratuité des frais d'examen pour la SI et HSI. Autre frais d'armes de cet expert en économie, l'élimination de la distribution de pain à nos écoliers. Mr. Speaker, sir, Dr. Arvind Boulel, the main spokesman of the same Labour Party in his house, in a press conference said that there are not enough social measures in this budget and that this government, that is we, should have done more. Whereas his leader, Dr. Arvind Boulel, in his post-budget press conference, referred to some of our measures and said that these were in the electoral manifesto of l'Alliance Nationale in October 2019. If one has to infer from the reaction of Dr. Angulam, then it is an aveu de taille that some measures contained in this budget are good measures, although he tried to declare petit papuli. I therefore fail to understand the position of Dr. Boulel, who is a seasoned and respected politician, who always says that the government should speak the truth to the population. Does he not have a duty to speak the truth as well? I was expecting him to tell the population the truth about some good measures contained in this budget, but alas. Mr. Speaker, sir, I mentioned earlier members of the opposition have run out of arguments and no longer knew how and what to criticize. They formulate criticism just for the sake of gaining political mileage. Let me tell them they have run out of fuel in trying to get political mileage and have been caught up in their own games. Monsieur le Président, voilà la différence entre eux et nous. Notre gouvernement est sincère dans son action. Nous soutenons directement ceux et celles qui ont le plus besoin, la classe moyenne, les plus vulnérables, et non pas les petits copains. We are the ones who really put people first. Honorable Mohammed, unfortunately, is not here. Yes, with the people, for the people. This summarizes the philosophy of this government. We are committed to give our unflinching support to our citizens, unlike the Labour Party, who does not walk the talk when in government. Mr. Speaker, sir, one member of the Labour Party mentioned that this government should have amended the Muslim Family Council Act well before to recognize the right to pension of Muslim widows whose marriages were not registered with the Muslim Family Council. Well, I am shocked to hear that coming from a member whose party was in power 3 mandates since 1995. Why didn't they correct this mistake so that all Muslim widows benefit from the widow's pension? Why? Please tell us why. Explain to these widows why the Labour Party or the PMSD did not, or the MM, did not correct this injustice when they were in power. Forget about the MM, they are already in the opposition. This shows that they did not have the political will to do so. Now that we are correcting this injustice, they still are not satisfied. History will remember that this government, under the able leadership of our Prime Minister, has had the bold political will to come up with amendment to the law to give the forgotten Muslim widows their due, which they have been waiting since several decades. I hope their duas will be with us. Monsieur le Président, le Premier ministre l'a dit lui-même, le budget 2022-2023 fut un des plus difficiles à présenter. Mais aujourd'hui, le constat est unanime. Ce budget est une véritable bouée de sauvetage pour les Mauriciens. Suivant la vague d'augmentation des prix, toute azimut, depuis quelques mois, le gouvernement était attendu au tournant. Les oiseaux de mauvais augure veillaient au grain, s'attendant sans doute à ce que nous augmentions la TVA, par exemple. Hélas pour eux, le gouvernement dirigé par Pravin Kumar Jagnat a choisi de soulager le peuple en maintenant les subsides sur les produits de base et en mettant de l'argent directement dans la poche des Mauriciens afin qu'ils puissent maintenir leur pouvoir d'achat. Et maintenant, l'opposition fait volte-face et affirme qu'il ne fallait pas financer de cette manière. Ils disent que nous aurions dû augmenter le salaire minimum. And they are trying to say that we should have only support, they are trying to, actually they are trying to say that we should have only provided support to those earning a minimum salary. What about those who are earning above minimum wage? So if I understand their argument correctly, we should not have compensated those above, those people who are getting salary above the minimum salary bracket for the loss in purchasing power. Mr. Speaker, sir, the House will recall that we introduced the national minimum wage in the previous mandate. When we introduced that measure, national minimum wage, the opposition were pleading the government to treat with care on the issue. They were saying that such a measure would put in peril the economy, job and SMEs in particular. That is why we set up the National Wage Consultative Council, which had as task to hold consultations, consider imperative of the economy, assess the impact of such a measure, and come up with the recommendations to the government. Now, the same opposition, and in particular some members who are against the national minimum wage, are coming forward to request the government to set the minimum wage at 13,500 rupees without a proper assessment of the economic situation and its bearing on the labor market. Mr. Speaker, sir, implementation of such a proposal now in the present context, especially bearing in mind that government is already supporting the SMEs by paying the lost salary compensation, would have been detrimental to the economy and would surely have resulted in enterprises closing down and massive job losses. So, such a call from the opposition can only be tagged as irresponsible. In fact, measures proposed by this government aims at social inclusiveness, whereby no one is left by the side of the road. Mr. Speaker, sir, with the same philosophy, it is with the same philosophy that we are abolishing municipal tax. Hence, there will be no more disparity between town and villages. Mr. Speaker, sir, once again, this government has shown by its action that the population can count on it. We have a long-term vision and we do not back down when it comes to making reform that will benefit each and everyone. The increase in pension today has been possible thanks to CSG introduced last year. What have we not heard as criticism from members of the opposition on CSG? The elderly, the widows, the invalids who will now be receiving 10,000 rupees will not tell you otherwise. Monsieur le Président, en parcourant les différentes mesures de ce budget, il est clair que ce gouvernement jette tout son poids dans la bataille contre la perte du pouvoir d'achat des Mauriciens. C'est sans aucun doute le nerf de la guerre. Il n'y a qu'à voir les annonces faites concernant le relèvement des plafonds fiscaux, ainsi ceux touchant 25 000 roupies à 53 846 roupies par mois ne seront imposés qu'à hauteur de 10%. Et ce barème d'imposition sera que de 12,5% pour ceux touchant jusqu'à 75 000 roupies, alors qu'avant, le taux était de 15%. Autre effort majeur, l'exonération fiscale pour un enfant poursuivant des études supérieures passe de 225 000 roupies à 500 000 roupies. Ce sont d'autant d'argent qui resteront dans les poches des contribuables et qui serviront à d'autres dépenses. Mr. Speaker, sir, other than income allowance of 1,000 rupees, the increased amount of basic pension, we are taking another measure that would improve the purchasing power of the workers. I am glad to announce that Cabinet has approved the recommendation to proceed with wage relativity adjustment in 17 sectors in the private sector to address the problem of wage distortion in the wage distribution caused by the introduction of the national minimum wage in 2018. Mr. Speaker, sir, regulations are being made to provide for wage relativity adjustment to some 70,000 workers of the private sector. The increase ranges up to a maximum of 1,000 rupees a month. The wage relativity adjustment would be implemented in a phased manner over a period of 3 years, as from 1st of July 2022. However, in view of the specificity of the catering and hospitality sector and SMEs in the prevailing economic situation, the wage adjustment in these sectors would take effect as from 1st of July 2023. Mr. Speaker, sir, on the question of subsidy, government traditionally subsidizes LPG, flour, long grain white rice, schedule bread, which can be considered more or less a sort of permanent subsidy. During the pandemic, with the surge in freight cost and absence of visibility, it was imperative for the government to intervene and protect consumers who were taking the whole burden of price increase to, in many cases, to an extent of unaffordability. This is why in July 2021, government had to intervene to introduce a subsidy mechanism on 7 essential product categories, namely canned fish, canned tomato, cheese, edible oil, margarine, milk powder, and pulses. This measure took effect from 12th of July 2021, and the retail prices of these commodities were locked for an initial period of 6 months. At that time, it was thought that the international situation would stabilize. Unfortunately, such was not the case, and the purchasing power of consumers was continuously threatened by substantial increase in prices. In the context of the tripartite meeting December 2021, to determine salary compensations, government further decided that in order to prevent further erosion of the purchasing power of consumers, the subsidy be extended to another 6 months in addition to the grant of salary compensation. The whole subsidy scheme would cost the government a colossal sum of 1.35 billion rupees up to June 2022. If such subsidies were not provided, the retail prices of these essential commodities would have witnessed an average increase of at least 30%. If the subsidy mechanism had been maintained for the next financial year, it would have been unsustainable, Mr. Speaker, sir. The subsidy mechanism would have cost the government around 4.8 billion rupees on the assumption that the prices would have remained the same for the forthcoming 12 months. In reality, the sum would work out to be higher than 4.8 billion due to constant hikes in importation costs. However, it should be pointed out that all these 7 product categories would still be controlled by way of markup with a reduced margin so as to ensure that importers do not practice undue profiteering to the detriment of consumers. The government is also introducing a control mechanism for other essential products such as pasta, wheat cereal, infant milk, infant food, as well as baby and adult diapers. The main aim of such price control is to enable those basic products to remain accessible to consumers. Mr. Speaker, sir, this government is not insensitive to the erosion of purchasing power of vulnerable consumers. In order to restore and maintain the purchasing power of consumers, the government is directing its resources and effort in alleviating the pressure of rising prices on consumers. To this effect, the budget set forward with the provision of an income of allowance of 1,000 rupees to those earning a gross salary up to 50,000 rupees. Besides, to protect the sensitive people, such as pensioners, an additional 1,000 rupees is being provided to their monthly pension for those who are below the age of 65. In fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, cerise sur le gâteau, a pensioner who is below 65, who is still working and drawing a salary less than 50,000 rupees will also benefit from an additional 1,000 rupees as income support, thus earning 2,000 rupees. This will concern some 81,000 plus pensioners below the age of 65 who are still in employment. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, sir, essential pharmaceutical products have been impacted by the rising import prices with an average percentage increase in the retail prices of the most consumed pharmaceutical product of about 7.39% on a quarterly basis since July 2017. The main factors that account for this increase include a rise in cost, insurance, and freight of 5.77%, an increase in freight cost of 36.43%. The free on board value has also increased by 6.07%. The government has not remained insensitive to such increase in prices of medical products, which do affect each and everyone. In line with the recommendation of the market study of the pharmaceutical sector carried out by the Competition Commission and not that from the leader of opposition as mentioned by some members yesterday. A system of regressive markup will be implemented so as to reduce the margin of pharmaceutical products. The regressive markup will be premised on the model of the higher the price of a medicine, the lower would be its markup. It should be highlighted that non-communicable disease has taken a toll in recent years amongst the population. In this context, the regressive markup mechanism will help bring down some relief to all those patients suffering from such illnesses, especially the old age people and the vulnerable classes of the society. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me reassure Honorable Utim, who questioned the stand of the government on paralyzed import yesterday. I wish to inform the House that an interministerial committee has been set up with the objective of looking into the possibility of amending the Industrial Property Act 2019 in order to allow parallel import, focusing primarily on pharmaceutical products and selected food commodities to ensure great affordability and reduce cost of import. The committee would soon complete its work and will submit its recommendation to the Cabinet. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is believed by some quarters that shifting partly towards an international exhaustion regime would lead to the importation of counterfeit or simply dumping of harmful products. I wish to reassure the population that should this measure, that is, allowing international exhaustion regime be adopted, several conditions would be put in place to enhance regulatory and supervisory aspects so as to ensure the norm, standard, and quality of products imported. Parallel import would allow greater access to pharmaceutical and other products with an important decrease in prices. It is apposite to mention here that Mauritius Chambers of Commerce and Industry have expressed concerns on the introduction of the parallel import. Though in the same, it would seem that most of the issues have been sufficiently addressed in the report conducted by Dr. Anna Maria Payson on the socio-economic impact of the international exhaustion of trademark rights in Mauritius. The latter has inter alia recommended to begin the process of adopting the regime of international exhaustion of trade rights while monitoring each of the productive sectors to determine how the process develops and to implement corrective measures if necessary. Mr. Speaker, sir, my ministry is conscious of the increasing cost of living, which is a direct result of rising international prices, and thus will ensure that essential products remain accessible to the population. Nevertheless, the government has tried to ensure that basic necessities are offered at an affordable price. Bread is a staple good consumed by all consumers for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. In this respect, government has maintained the price of scheduled bread. It is important to note that the Association des propriétaires de boulangerie had asked for an increase of 4.10 rupees in the price of bread to ease their financial constraint. If government would have increased the price of bread to 4.10 rupees, inflation would have increased exponentially, given that it is an important element in the consumer price index basket. To alleviate the burden on bakers, 1.4 billion rupees is being disbursed by the government for a subsidy of 591.25 rupees on a packet of 25 kg flour. Bakers will therefore continue to pay a bag of 25 kg of flour at 108.85 rupees instead of 700 rupees, Mr. Speaker, sir. Therefore, moreover, the price of flour sold to consumers is 9.70 rupees per kg, whilst the real price is 28 rupees per kg, thereby implying a subsidy of 65%. The price of long grain rice, white rice to consumers is 8.80 rupees per kg, while the real price is 26.20 rupees per kg, implying a subsidy of 59%. The total annual subsidy on LPG flour, long grain white rice amounts to around 4.5 billion. Mr. Speaker, sir, the STC also imposed basmati rice to allow Mauritians of different income groups to discover the taste of authentic basmati rice, and STC basmati is recognized as a household brand. In May 2022, STC launched a new label under the name of Smash. This would also concern all products directly commercialized by STC, which would be sold at the most competitive prices to consumers. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to draw the attention of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition that the brand of basmati rice STC is commercializing is of better standard. It is actually pure basmati 1121. It has a percentage of broken less than 3% and has been qualified as premium grade, whereas it appears that the other brand that is being commercialized by other distributors are blended. We shall make a thorough inquiry into that. So, this is to say to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, like should be compared with like before coming to any conclusion. Don't jump to conclusion. SCC, being the trading arm of the government, will play a vital role and extend its palettes of products it usually imports. 500 million has been earmarked in this budget to the STC for it to supply essential products such as milk, oil. As part of an initiative personally spearheaded by the Honourable Prime Minister during his official state visit to India in April 2022, STC is currently signing an MOU with the National Agricultural Cooperative Marketing Federation of India Limited, NAFED, where procurement of rice, wheat, edible oil and other agricultural commodities will be made available at a competitive price due to lower CIF prices owing to the good relationship between Mauritius and India. Similarly, SCC is in negotiation with the Malagasy authorities for the procurement of pulses. Once it materializes, pulses will be made available at reasonable prices. Mr. Speaker, sir, during the past month, the import of many basic commodities have witnessed continuous escalating costs, mainly due to exponential increase in freight. But unfortunately, we could not do otherwise as we're dancing to the tune of two main shipping lines serving the Mauritian route. Hence, the charter of the two regional vessels, which aims at ensuring adequate and timely supply of commodities at reasonable cost, is a far-reaching measure and should be uploaded by everyone in this country, including opposition members. Phase 1 of the project will cater for the South Asian route, including India, Sri Lanka, Seychelles, while Phase 2 of the project will concern Eastern African route to service trade partnering countries such as Madagascar, Tanzania and Kenya, and so many to add on the list. It is apposite to point out, and this is very true, right? It is apposite to point out here that our import from Asian trading partners is significant to around $802 million from India, $6.2 million from Sri Lanka, $90.12 million from Malaysia, and $31.32 million from Singapore. Whereas the import from African trading partners is significant also, with around $401.9 million from Africa, $27.80 million from Madagascar, and $44 million from Kenya. The chartering of the vessel will no doubt reduce the country's reliance on the variation in the business model of the international shipping line. This project shall enable port-to-port transaction at a lower freight cost, leading to lower import costs for essential goods and other commodities. Mr. Speaker, sir, my ministry shall be at the forefront to ensure that the benefit derived from this project are being directed to the consumers and not to importers or distributors. Monsieur le Président, on l'a souvent répété, il est urgent que les Mauriciens fassent un retour vers la terre. Notre dépendance sur les importations pour nos fruits et légumes ont assez duré. C'est pourquoi ce budget fait la part belle aux mesures devant inciter les Mauriciens à cultiver ces produits. Il est urgent d'atteindre l'autosuffisance alimentaire, surtout quand les organisations internationales tirent la sonnette d'alarme sur les potentiels risques de manque de nourriture découlant du conflit russo-ukrainien. Monsieur le Président, un des indicateurs économiques qui n'est pas passé inaperçu est la baisse du taux de chômage de 9,1% à 7,8%. Contrairement à ce qu'a dit l'opposition, ceci est une indication claire que la reprise est bel et bien là. C'est le résultat de diverses initiatives prises par ce gouvernement en matière de formation, d'incitation au recrutement. Il faut reconnaître toutefois que le taux de chômage des jeunes et l'intégration des femmes sur le marché du travail est un problème récurrent. Ce qui m'amène à aborder les contours de la mesure concernant la prime de l'emploi. Cette prime mensuelle de 15 000 roupies sera accordée à 10 000 jeunes ainsi qu'aux femmes n'ayant pas plus de 50 ans. Ce coup de pouce à l'emploi vise à donner aux jeunes une première expérience professionnelle. Il a aussi comme objectif d'encourager les femmes qui ont dû abandonner leur emploi pour des raisons familiales à retrouver le chemin du travail. Nous allons aussi doper l'emploi grâce au recrutement de 8 353 fonctionnaires. Il faut aussi ajouter les 2 000 postes à pourvoir au sein de Mori Facilities. Faites le compte, ce ne sont pas moins de 20 000 emplois qui sont créés. De plus, le gouvernement continue à éliminer tous les obstacles qui empêcheraient les jeunes à se former. C'est dans cet esprit que nous abolissons les frais d'examen pour les étudiants des instituts de la MITD. Mr. Speaker, sir, the MITD is working in close collaboration with the business sector to ensure training is aligned with industry needs. We are focusing our skills development for school leavers and employed for enhancing their employability and in reskilling and upskilling of those who are not fully employed due to the economic crisis, enabling them to maintain their employability. Youth unemployment has been recognized as a serious challenge in developing countries and advanced economies. Mr. Speaker, sir, in fact, when you look at the statistics of youth unemployment in Mauritius since the 1990s, there is a trend which is rather striking. In 1991, when the MSM was in power, youth unemployment rate was at 21.39%. Then, from 1995 to 2000, under the Labour Party government, it rose from 23.17% to an ever high rate of 26.75%. In fact, this government is doing better in its action to tackle youth unemployment than the PMSD and Labour government regime. Even after 2 years of COVID-19 and its impact on our economy, figures shows that youth unemployment rate decreased in the third quarter of 2021 to 26.4% from 32% in the corresponding quarter of 2020. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, so as to tackle youth unemployment, we chose to rethink our strategy and decided to review the training program. Effective dual training program utilizing a combination of classroom and practical skill training present an approach of developing skilled workforce and meeting workforce demand. The data analysis revealed that dual training program system has a significantly higher rate on return of the labor market earning compared with regular classroom vocational training program. The National Apprenticeship Program was introduced as a budgetary measure in the financial year 2018-2019 to enable young unemployed persons to have greater access to training. This system of training is demand-led and employer-driven. It enables an apprentice to acquire skills and work experience which make them readily employable. The National Apprenticeship Program has been quite successful, and there is an increased number of employers willing to engage in this mode of training, in both existing trade and new areas. Mr. Speaker, sir, the international organization ILO projection suggests that there will be a working hour deficit equivalent to 52 million full-time jobs owing to crisis-induced labor market disruption. In order to mitigate such disruption in measures, a series of measures have been provided in the 2022-2023 budget to support our people to facilitate access to the world of work. Accordingly, in this budget, we have come up with new policies and ideas to meet the expectation of the population. Last year, over the country was severely hit by COVID-19 pandemic. We managed to contain unemployment through unprecedented and bold measures. Autant de mesures concrètes et réalisables, Monsieur le Président. Une fois de plus, le gouvernement MSM démontre sa capacité à réaliser des projets, à innover, même durant des périodes difficiles, à relancer une économie qui sort de 2 années de contraction. Avec nous, point d'effet d'annonce. We always mean business. Monsieur le Président, il suffit de parcourir les journaux pour constater que les stakeholders du monde économique sont unanimes à plébisciter ce budget. Et oui, c'est ce qu'on appelle un walk-over sur l'indice de la satisfaction. Il ne fait aucun doute que toutes ces réactions positives ont laissé l'opposition anéantie. Monsieur le Président, pour conclure, nous avions été élus en 2014 pour changer ce pays, pour le rendre plus juste, plus équitable. En 2019, le peuple nous a réélus sur la base d'un bilan accompli, sur ces mêmes principes d'équité. Quand, en 2020, la pandémie du Covid-19 s'est abattue sur nous, le gouvernement ne s'est pas défilé. Nous avions pris nos responsabilités en protégeant la population et en sauvant des centaines de milliers d'emplois à travers le Wage Assistance Scheme au coût de 27 milliards de roupies. Cette année, l'augmentation en cascade de prix découlant de la guerre en Ukraine a mis à mal les portefeuilles de nos citoyens. Et ce gouvernement, fidèle à ses valeurs et principes, n'est pas resté insensible. Le budget prévoit pas moins de 12 milliards de roupies comme social benefits, dont 4,3 milliards de roupies en vue de maintenir les prix d'engrais alimentaires de base. Monsieur le Président, c'est la preuve que ce gouvernement agit comme un bouclier à chaque fois que les Mauriciens font face à une crise. We shall continue to do so as long as we have their blessing. Merci de m'avoir écouté, Monsieur le Président.
Members will suspend the sitting for 1 hour.